Welcome to Founders Unplugged, hosted by Greg McCallum. Long-form, honest conversations with founders and entrepreneurs from around the world.
So, I'm Mariah, Skogland, born in Morocco, grew up in Switzerland, and now I'm living in Norway. So I feel like what I do right now, I've been doing all my life, but I did have a previous life in private banking and finance, where I've done many things. And I would say, what we were taking care of, or my industry was wealth management. So, but that's my previous life. Interesting, but also boring. That's why for me, it's so long ago and not so interesting to talk about. But the past 10 years, I moved to Norway, and it was a great opportunity and period to be part of the startup community here that was vibrant and dynamic and growing. And it still is, even though right now the government is not really on our side, on the side of founders. There are different taxes that may be put in place that will really jeopardize the future of this country, really. So that's a big topic. We may not cover it today. So, I'm a company builder. I launched a platform here in Norway called the Hub.io, which is today the number one job platform for startups to recruit talent in the Nordics. So I did that in Norway. We were also in other countries in Northern Europe. I was not the only one, of course. I was a country manager here in Norway. Great opportunity. And this was, I would say, a big foundation, or one of the foundations of all the work I've done later on. After that, I launched an online accelerator, an online community for companies from all around the world, which I sold 2 years later in the middle of COVID. I was also the CEO of one of the largest accelerators in Norway. Today, I think I'm still an investor there, but not active at all. So today they, I think, invest and accelerate they accelerate at least 60 companies per year. So that's quite a big volume. And I mean, now what I focus on with my company, my own company, the Visionary Company Board and VC, we train board members. So along the way, I realized that the companies we work with, the companies that are in the ecosystem, lack competent board members, actually, who know what it takes to build a company, what it takes to fundraise, to scale, who have skin in the game and understand how to support founders. So it's not just coming on a board and being a new boss to the founder and just getting reporting from them and telling them, bossing them around, what have you done? Oh, it's not going well. No, I mean, a board member in a startup and a scale up, it's a different game. You have to be there to support them, build the company. That's why you're there. So that's what we do now. We train board members. We also train scale-up founders to raise a Series A, B, C, scale internationally. And also one of my big passion is to coach leaders and founders on how to build their personal brand on LinkedIn, because it's such a huge opportunity. This is how I actually bootstrap my company. I mean, run my company for the past 4 years, thanks to LinkedIn mainly. And now, of course, we have a big sales team in place as well with different strategies. But LinkedIn is such an opportunity, especially if you want to bootstrap, if you want to stay lean, if you want to avoid raising money and so on. So this is in short what I do. I'm also an active investor. So directly and indirectly, I have a portfolio of 100 plus. That's in short.
Quite a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so the fact that you found the time to join me today is even more impressive. And I'm really, really thankful of that.
I mean, it took us 6 months to book it, right?
Yeah, that's true. It did take a while. Yeah. But really, I'm so thankful. I say this to all my guests, but you really sound like you've got your plate full. So I really do appreciate it. And yeah, and I wouldn't say boring at all. I don't think there's any single part of that was boring. Even the early part that you mentioned there. And I wanted to probe a little bit more on that. So how did you even get into that space in the first place? Working in, it was risk management and all that sort of stuff. So was that straight out of university or college or school or something like that?
Yeah.
It was. And is that what you wanted to do at the time?
Yes. In Switzerland, the only thing you can think about is wealth management and private banking. Right. So you don't really have options. It's either you work in chocolate factory, you work with chocolate, luxury, hotels, or banks.
Well, why didn't you go with chocolate? I mean, come on. For me, the choice is obvious.
It's not really big industry in Geneva. No, okay. You have to go outside Geneva, and I said local. So, but I think, what I learned in private banking is something that I still use. I'm a risk manager. So I was in risk management. I was in investment management. I was in wealth management for royal families in the Middle East in my last position.
Wow.
But everything I gained there, even though I found it very boring because it was processes and directives, and I was in charge at some point in risk management to redo the processes and directives in the bank to make sure we're aligned with the financial regulators and so on, regulations. So now when I run companies, I have the risk manager hat all the time. All the time. What happens if we do this? Should we do this? How do we, evaluate the risk and potential? So it's something that I learned there and super crucial when you're building a company. And also, when you work in private banking in Switzerland, you also have access to very great minds, whether it's your clients or lawyers or wealth managers. And I'm still collaborating with some of them. Yesterday I reached out to a private banker in Dubai, and I told him, okay, you're in Dubai. Can I start a company in Dubai? Who should I talk to? Immediately, he connects me to the right person. So this is the value of the network from Switzerland as well.
Yeah, it's not what you know, right? It's who you know. But that's interesting. You mentioned that you still wear that hat a lot, though. Do you find that in some ways, is that always useful? Or does that in some ways hinder you sometimes? Is that hat always appropriate for the startup thing? You know what I mean?
As founders, we are big risk takers.
Right.
Okay. What I learned is that we're big risk takers, but if you want to build a company, you also have to assess risks continuously. It's about, for example, the market or the team members or the processes. I can speak about one of my latest experiences with one of my business partners who's completely, it just goes, let's do it. And I had that many times with some business partners and founders I worked with, where they go for it. And it's kind of like, okay, let's just figure out, let's say sorry later. And I'm also, an advocate of that. Just do it and say sorry later, okay? But sometimes you have to assess if that sorry is going to actually cost you more than the risk you take, than the opportunity. And I think it's beneficial. Of course, you cannot be a risk manager, otherwise you do nothing. At the same time, you cannot just go bold and burn bridges and burn your reputation. And I'm very careful with the reputation, so that when I'm sharing this story, I'm reflecting in particular about a particular strategy, outreach strategy. And one of them, for example, mentioned, he said, "Oh, but Raya, since we're selling and you're selling LinkedIn courses, why don't we just put ads?" And I'm like, it's not really the message. I'm helping founders actually build their company with zero ads.
Organic.
We're all about organic. So
I see that all the time and it makes me laugh.
I'm not really in favor of ads. But you know what? 6 months later, yesterday, I talked to him and I'm like, maybe it's not ads for this particular program. It can be, we can communicate it differently and still achieve our goal, which is like a bigger audience. But I still want to be authentic and close to, because people are not stupid. They're going to say, okay, well, Raya, you're promoting your programs via ads, but you're actually teaching organic content. So how to create organic content and build your audience like that. And this is what I've done for the past 4 years. So this is the kind of risk you need to assess, and the timing. When is it worth taking that risk?
Yeah, and the reputation piece is really important. I think a lot of founders assume that because they're early on, they haven't got a reputation yet. And so it doesn't matter, but it does matter. It really does. People are watching, you have to be very, very careful.
And people are talking. I can give you an example. 2 founders we invested in 2 years ago. Brilliant power couple. Okay. They mesmerize you. And that's one of the co-investors when looking at that round, and we ended up investing, and he didn't invest, was like, this is too good to be true. Something is not, we're like, oh, come on, the metrics are there, the clients are there, let's do it. He's like, I actually don't like that dynamic, the founders dynamic. We're like, what are you talking about? Like, they're great. They're such a power, couple together. And this was the problem. The dynamics, actually. They were hiding the fact that they were actually in a relationship. And that's a risk. That's a risk. So if everything goes well, it goes well. But guess what? 3 months later, they broke up. So the company, they just they decided to bankrupt the company. And these founders now, they did not think about that maybe, about the reputation. Because what happens is that they had 30 plus investors. And all these investors, including us, we have a network of investors where we share deal flow. And when an investor wants to invest in a founder, what they do is that they're going to look at what are the friends in common on LinkedIn, the connections in common. And they're going to reach out. Oh, Raya, I've seen you invested in the previous company. How did that go? What do you think I'm going to say? Right? So they're not aware of this kind of risk when you decide to just take decisions on the spot. You break up and you don't care about your investors. Or there is another company as well. I have so many, like I have a big portfolio. I'm lucky to have invested in great founders. I do have 3 bankruptcies in my portfolio, so still okay, you know. But all these situations, these founders, their reputation is done. So they're thinking about going abroad.
You can still
Investors with a network are everywhere.
Yeah,
we talk, we speak.
So that would follow them, even though they're split up. If they were to go, for example, to found another startup, is what you're saying. So if they went to invest money, right?
I mean, it's normal to split up. It happens that, of course, you know, we're not going to force them to stay married. I think it's the intention.
It's the lying about
the
it
lying,
that was the problem.
Not being completely open with us.
Right. Right. Well, yeah, not necessarily lying, just not being honest. Yeah.
It's not being completely transparent.
Yeah.
So if you're a couple, I want you to tell us that you're a couple, okay? And we will, you know, we will appreciate that and we will see the strength in that. But if you're hiding it, it means something else. Like this is why.
It's interesting. I've come across quite a few co-founders over my time that are couples, and they've said before, you know, we're really struggling because no one will invest in us because we're couples, and I do feel for those companies, because, like, for example, with my wife and I know that if we were to found a company together, there would be no problem. But I'd assume most married couples, when they're happy, will say that. But I genuinely believe that we've been through everything, and I have no doubt about that. But and so that would be quite disappointing. But I think it also depends on the company too, right? Like if it's something that where, I don't know, couples are kind of at the heart of the product, maybe that might make sense. You know what I mean? Like if it's an offer for couples, or I don't know, you know, couples retreats or something, I don't know, then maybe
had
that
nothing to do with couples.
Right. Well, there you go.
Fintech.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Not for couples, fintech for people, for different kind of people.
Yeah. But it's difficult. I mean, is it true? Is it true that largely investors just see that as too high risk and won't invest? Or are there exceptions?
I think there are always, it's case by case, but it is a risk, like the one we just mentioned now.
Yeah.
And investors have so many opportunities. So if they see that one can be a risk, they're like, why would I bother? You know, next, please.
Right.
There are a lot of opportunities out there. There are a lot of great founders out there.
Yeah. It's just one. It's a red mark, right? At the end of the day. Yeah. So then tell me about how you made the transition from sort of working in that institutional banking arena into startups. How did that occur? Because it's a very different world, right? How did that happen?
So, you know, I do think that when you're a founder kind of forever. It's in your DNA.
Right.
It's a personality trait. So I've been looking into starting businesses since I was 15. And so this has always been part of me and my behavior, finding problems and trying to fix them, wondering, why can't we fix it? That's a mindset. That's the way your brain is wired. You find problems and you want to fix them. So naturally, even in banking, I was frustrated, even though I got into the position where I could impact the organization with processes and optimization. I still felt like, what's my impact? You know, I'm bigger than this. I'm bigger than this bank. I want to impact other banks, you know, but I cannot scale this if I'm employed here. At the same time, around, you know, that was like 15 years ago.
Hi, a friendly reminder to share this episode with your network, like and subscribe. And if you are feeling really supportive, please consider reviewing the show on the podcast platform of your choice. It all really helps support what we do. Thank you. Now back to the show.
Startup, I don't know if you remember startup weekends or if you're familiar with that. So it was especially big in the French-speaking countries. And it came to actually Norway as well when I moved. So Startup Weekend was a brand, a franchise, quite all over the world. US and French-speaking countries, it was going through the network of community builders. Okay, so this is how you learn about it. So the concept of Startup Weekend is that you come on Friday night, you pitch your idea to a room of 50 to 100 people who either want to pitch their idea as well, or they want to join a company. So I went there with a friend who's also an entrepreneur at heart. I had an idea and I went on stage and I pitched it. And my idea, so that was a long time ago before Airbnb, it was basically, what about renting out rooms from your own home? But my angle was luxury homes. It was like, imagine you can go and rent a room in a luxury home. And the feedback I got was like, but first of all, I don't want to rent a room in my home. Okay, that's the first feedback. Also, Airbnb, some of the founders also got, but that was just like not the big picture, getting the big picture. But also for luxurious owners, that was the angle where I was wrong. Owners of big properties and luxurious properties, they were not interested in that. What we were interested in staying at their place, right? Like, why would I have a stranger?
They don't need the money, right?
I don't need the money. I was completely off.
Yeah.
And so I still got like a few votes because people come to you and vote. They give you like their name. So you can build a team. Then after me, so I only got like a few names, not enough to build a team. And you could only have like, I think, a certain amount of companies that would start on Friday night. So there was another company that I ended up joining that worked like for a year and a half and like co-founder issues. And they moved to Paris and they left me on the side in Geneva. And that company, which of course was not going to work. And I still see startups today, founders pitching me that idea. And I'm like, well, okay, maybe it will work today. Never say never, but I've done that, been there. Stupid idea. Okay, hard to get off the ground. Sorry, never say stupid idea, but our idea was stupid. So, but you get so fired up and convinced that this is it. Everybody's going to love it. And this is it, unicorn status. So, the app was going to give you, based on an algorithm, tailored to what you need and questions that you answer.
Algorithm was the AI back in the day, wasn't it?
Back then.
Yeah.
It would give you like 4 events, events happening in your city this weekend, so you can join. I mean, yes, okay, and I still see companies, founders who pitch me this idea because, I mean, it's true that maybe it's Friday night and you're like, what should I do tonight? I wish I could just get recommendations. But the way you monetize it, and there are so many other platforms right now, so we have to think about all these challenges. Not all problems are worth solving, okay? And if you cannot figure out the way to monetize it, maybe drop it. Okay, we're going to talk about like maybe Facebook. They didn't monetize for so long, but not everybody's Facebook. Okay, Facebook is one of a lifetime opportunity. And yes, there are many platforms that started by gaining users and so on. But if you really want to be sustainable, for these kind of platforms, we need a strong network of VCs, of investors, of crazy investors that will believe in that vision. I am sorry, there are not enough investors like that. There are maybe in Silicon Valley. That's it. If you are in Europe, you need to start making money or go to the US and bet on yourself, build your network. So yeah, that's how I started to do the transition, got into Startup Weekend. And this honestly, it's a great concept. It should happen again, these startup weekends.
Yeah, it sounds really cool.
From Friday night, you don't sleep until Sunday where you pitch. So you're like all together figuring out.
So you get a real sense of what it's like to be a founder very quickly.
Yeah, it's like you sleep maybe 3 hours, on Friday night and on Saturday night. And you have to pitch to a jury of, startup founders and investors. And you're voted best startup, okay? And then you win a little prize and you continue your journey if you want to. So that got me hooked. And then I have friends who also wanted to start companies. So I started with them. And I quit, twice my job in the banking sector to try for 4-6 months a company with this one, join a startup to learn from there. So I just got hooked like many when you start the journey. And 10 years later, I'm still part of the ecosystem and helping founders actually avoid the mistakes I experienced.
It's addictive, right? But what brought you to the Startup Weekend in the first place? Was it something someone recommended to you? Had you been keeping an eye on it? Yeah.
So I had like a few friends who have wanted to go into like entrepreneurship,
Right.
and that startup weekend happened in the university. Yeah.
Right.
So it was promoted at the university, and we just joined. We're like, why not? Let's do
Fair
it.
enough.
Maybe we're the next something, you know.
Yeah, the next big thing. That's awesome. Yeah, that sounds really cool. They should definitely do something like that again. That's
Yeah,
it's like a hackathon almost. It's like
exactly.
yeah, like a
Startup
startup
weekend.
hackathon. Yeah.
Yeah, the guy who founded it, Frank, he's French actually. He was in the US when he started it.
Mm.
He's still around in the ecosystem. So that was a great, 3 intense days to build a company.
Mm. Well, maybe something
Started
that
it.
someone will bring back eventually. We'll see. And so then, what was your first kind of proper, would you say, startup job? Because you said you did a few bits here and there, but what would you consider sort of almost, I don't know, resume worthy? Was it your CCO role that you first got, or something else? Would you say?
Yeah, I would say I was part of as a CCO a few months in a company in Norway, Share My
Mm.
3D,
Mm.
that got acquired actually by a Norwegian unicorn today.
Oh wow.
But I left. I left because we didn't have any more money to pay me, and I did not get during that period of time to get my options. But I also know that transaction after I left was just symbolic because the founder, who's a genius, was also the co-founder of Skogland. Today, it's a unicorn. So that was just like, okay, this company is going nowhere. And also, like, again, that was too futuristic, even though we got investors from, Startup Lab was one of the investors, which is a big one here in Norway, incubator, accelerator, and network of investors. Even though we got them on board, it's not because you get investors that actually your product is gonna succeed. The market will tell you, and we struggled with the market. It was too futuristic, and too niche. This was 3D visualization, an algorithm that could help you visualize 3D objects in the cloud, like so specific. The guy invented that and was like, okay, now go to market. We're like, okay, let's try.
Yeah.
Okay, he got one company, a museum, to buy that because they had like some virtual object they wanted to showcase on their online shop, or online portal. But after that, no one else was interested.
That's the
So
problem with being too intelligent in the startup world, is that sometimes you create things that are just beyond what the market needs. And at the end of the day, you should ideally be speaking to the market first and then figuring out what it is they need, rather than the other way around. I've worked with a couple of founders like that too, and a couple of products too. I'm like, this is really cool, this is really interesting, but I don't know anyone that needs this.
yeah,
You can't invent the problem later after you've created the solution. It doesn't work,
no. And also, one client is not enough. It's not
Yeah.
a strong signal. Two, not enough. Three, not enough. You need to have like validation from 50 who will tell you, I'm ready to buy this. I'm actually so interested. I'm giving you some money today so you can deliver in 6 months, because the problem I have is so huge, so painful. I want to make sure that 6 months is nothing, to wait for. I can pay today to make sure I get it amongst the first ones in 6 months. And this is when you're like, okay, this is actually the strategy we apply in my company. We sell products where we get today the funding from the clients to deliver in 6 months. If we are not creating anything before the client is paying.
Yeah, I tell a lot of founders that constantly, that you don't need to have your product ready before you start selling it. Like, you'd be amazed how many times you can sell something before it's ready. If it's good enough, people will wait. And or at the very least, even if they don't pay for it early, they might give you a letter of intent, and that is still good. That's still pipeline. And if you can go to an investor with that and say, look what we've got ready to go, that's
Exactly.
strong. That's really
Exactly.
strong. We're in the process of doing that for our own startup before we announce our seed round, and it's tough though, but it is but it is a smart strategy for sure. Yeah. So okay, so you did that CCO role, and then you decide to found something yourself, right?
Yeah. So the CCO role, I'll tell you the story.
Yeah.
And it's the first time I tell it in public.
Oh, okay, excellent.
So
I'm strapped in.
the story is that I had that CCO role, and I had no clue about our financials. But then I got called in by the COO and tells me, Raya, we can't pay you next month, so we have to let you go. Otherwise, we have the obligation by law to start like figuring out how to pay you, and we cannot right now. And I was pregnant, like 3 weeks pregnant.
Oh, shit.
And I was like, shit, I'm laid off, 3 months pregnant. I mean, I'm not gonna try to sue them. They don't have money. They're founders like me. That doesn't make any sense. But who's gonna hire me? What am I gonna do now? Okay. So I call the value of the network. Okay. I call one of my mentors and I tell him, Sean, listen, I just got fired and I'm pregnant. What do we do here? He's like, Raya, great news. Because finally, I can share with you an opportunity. Danske Bank is looking for someone with your profile, with your network. Because before joining Share My 3D, which I also got the job, I got it like on the spot. Almost the same day I decided to get a job. Because before that, I was creating networking events for founders. I wanted to build my network. I arrived in Norway. I had zero network. I realized, Raya, your startup weekend did not teach you much. So you need to learn from founders. So let's organize networking events every month. You host people. And I hosted up to 300 people every month. So this is how, when I came to Norway, my network just like, exploded. After 1 year, I had 1,000 people in my community. Everybody knew of me in the Norwegian ecosystem. So this is how I got the opportunity at Share My 3D. I was like, okay, so what do you do, Raya? I do this, and how is it going? Yeah, it's going well, but I'm looking for something now. Maybe it's time to join actually a startup to learn more. And like, yeah, we're looking for a CCO. Want to join? Yeah, thank you. Okay. So, and while I was building my network, obviously, I'm solving problems. I'm like, okay, I have this community. I meet them every month. I need to put them online because I'm getting Facebook messages at that time. Facebook was huge. Facebook messages on, can you connect me? I forgot the name of that guy. So I was like, I can't do this every day. I need to put them online, figure out something. So I started to build a platform to help them build their network. Myself, first time founders, trying to raise money, wrong processes, raising money, building the tech, done it all the mistakes you can possibly make, wrong co-founders, and wrong leadership as well from my side, learned a lot since then, still learning. So I put down that online platform, joined Share My 3D. And when I called Sean, he said, well, great, Raya, because Danske Bank wants to launch the same thing that you were building. And they're looking for someone in Norway. They haven't found anybody. And you have the network, all the startups. Why not? Meet them. I'll arrange a meeting. I met Danske Bank. 30 minutes later, we're like, in. I remember even what she said. She was like, this is a match made in heaven. She was like, this is a match made in heaven. We were waiting for you. So I had a great mentor as well there, Sophia, who's now a successful founder in Denmark. She was in charge of Denmark. I was in charge of Norway. And learned a lot. And I would say that was funded by Danske Bank, but it was via my company. So they really wanted a founder to run it. True entrepreneurial initiative, but not completely, a startup because funded by a giant. Still keeping it minimum cost, lean, but funded. So it's different ball game. And that was, I think, my true startup experience, my true business experience, because after 1 month, they had the platform. And after 1 month, I brought on board the first 50 companies plus jobs that they were recruiting. And 2 years later, I had 1,200 plus startups, all the startups in Norway on our platform, thousands of jobs. Now it's like 1 million applications per year across the Nordics. So that was, I got over 2 years to learn how to scale something online, via inbound, outbound, organic, ads, everything you need to learn to build a scale up. That's my true experience. First, number one, I would say, not even Share My 3D, because at Share My 3D, we're just trying to figure out things,
Yeah.
While with the hub.io.
But still really valuable experience, because that is what it's like most of the time.
Exactly. True.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. Because it sounds like really with Deutsche Bank, that was like a speed run version of what normally takes sometimes, 4, 5, 6 years. So totally.
It takes 5 years to build that. And then I just continued building on, my expertise and building other platforms and starting to also coach others. So I had the chance to coach Firy.com and invest in them via the factory. So Firy is now the number one cryptocurrency investment platform in Norway. They also expanded in Denmark. And I had the chance to coach so many others as well and help them fundraise and scale. So that's what I've been doing now.
And then the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. When did you? This is an interesting thing because I really struggled with this for a while when it came to sort of mentoring other people. Like, when did you feel qualified enough to do that? You know what I mean?
It's a good
Like,
question.
because for me, it happened quite accidentally. People would start asking me for advice, and I just start giving it, and then word of mouth, through your network, people say, oh, if you're struggling, ask Greg. And then it got to a point where I felt like, okay, well, I'm now an advisor and mentor, and I really struggled for a while before I decided to tell the world that, because I felt a bit like an imposter.
Yeah.
Why am I qualified? Like, it's not like I've had exits, and do you know what I mean? Like, it just felt like a bit, and that's why I'm still very careful about what I say and how I frame myself, because I'm not like a multiple exited founder who's a millionaire and all. You know what I mean? So I'm still just I always just say commercial stuff. That's me. How did you know when it was the right time to start
I
doing that?
think it's when you start to help people and you see the impact. You see
Right.
actually the progress. You see the, like, it's almost life-changing moments, aha moments in them. When you see that 6 months, 1 year later, they come back and they say, thank you. Thank you because you helped me save money. You helped me scale this. You helped me remove, team members that I had that were not necessary, or you optimized my situation. You helped me connect to this person and now they are on my board. They're my investor. So I've done it when I was at the hub. I was, as the hub, you become the hub. You started to get requests from all over Europe and especially Norway with, can you help me with this? Can you help me with this? And can you review my pitch deck? I'm like, and I start to review pitch decks. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. This, it's just like also being critical and giving a different perspective, helping them with that, coming from a different angle and helping them reflect. So I've done, like, I think during the first 4 years, I've done just pro bono, just pro bono. I didn't need to be paid. I was doing other things. And when you start to see the impact, it helps. You start to feel, okay, actually what I'm doing and saying makes sense, and there are results. So it's really data driven. And when I joined the factory, I mean, the factory is professional in running, building accelerators and coaching. So I got to coach several founders. At some point, with the combination of online, offline, it was like 100 plus, per, I mean, at some point it was per week, honestly. So during COVID, it was crazy. And you just learn by doing. And also you learn from others. You learn a lot from others who have been in the game for a long period of time. I also coach with others in combination with other serial entrepreneurs, and we come in together. So this is how it starts.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I feel exactly the same way actually now on reflection. Yeah, it's when once you see that impact, and it's also quite validating, isn't it? It's just to know, oh, okay, so sometimes I do get it right,
Yeah.
to hear that. But yeah, it's interesting to hear that. What you mentioned something really early on when we first started talking, which was really interesting too, which was this idea of like, you always felt like you had entrepreneurial tendencies, right? That's really interesting to me, especially as you then went on to say, because you're always looking to try and improve systems or streamline things. That was something that I always did at a very young age too. My very first jobs, I would be known for the guy that just, like, working in a kitchen, for example. I would, as soon as there was a quiet period, I would clean everything and I would rearrange everything and I'd make it easier. And then my second job, I'd do the same thing. And I was always known as this guy that just made things better, not just for himself and easier, but then for the next person. And then went on to proper jobs, and not proper jobs, they're all proper jobs, but you know what I mean, like different types of jobs. And I would do the same thing too, and just pull things apart, put them back together, and make them more ergonomic, more streamlined. So I know where that comes from me. Where did that come from for you?
I'm
What
curious
was
to hear where did it come from? Oh, I think it probably comes from things that I'm not aware of. Okay,
right?
then there is the personality, but also, I grew up between Morocco and Switzerland, and you go to Switzerland, you're surrounded by wealth, and you go to Morocco every summer. I used to go to Morocco, and you see poverty on the streets. So it triggered me at a young age where I was wondering why these people have and these people don't have. Why? What is
Mm,
it exactly? So it's education, it's the mindset a lot, seeing opportunities, believing that you can do it. It's access to resources, capital. It's knowledge, access. So capital, network as well. Knowing the right people, meeting those who can open your eyes on opportunities, who can mentor you, who can. So I've been really wondering for a long time, and I guess this is also why I do what I do today, because everything we do is about helping leaders and founders and board members access, a network, competence, knowledge, capital, and the mindset as well. In our programs, we always cover, the growth mindset and how to perform better, how to, look at opportunities instead of seeing challenges, how to
That
be solution oriented.
Yeah, that the growth mindset terminology, I think, is one of the biggest misunderstood, overly used and misunderstood terms in in our world, right? What do you think that actually means, growth mindset? Because
What do you
it
think
is
it means?
it is a bit of a cliched
It
statement
covers
these
a lot of
days, isn't it?
things.
Yeah.
To me, it's like, I give you an example. When something happens, and I was reflecting on it this morning as well. It's like,
Mm,
if something happens and it looks like a problem, let's turn it into something. No, it's a good thing. Oh, you had a problem. Good. It's a good thing. What does
mm,
it mean? How can you fix it? This is for me the growth mindset. Is that you look at something and you don't get stuck. You grow beyond it.
mm.
Okay, you look outside. You see opportunities with others see problems, but it's not about problems like finding a problems in the market to solve. This is not the kind
Yeah,
of problem I'm talking about. Some people see, you
like
would tell them, oh, but
roadblocks.
you can do it. You can do it this way. Like, no, I can't. But why not? What stops you? Limiting beliefs. So to me, growth mindset is, it's a very big general term, and it's a wide topic.
Yeah.
It covers limiting beliefs. It's the mindset. It's different angles, and it depends from a person. It's different from a person to another.
Mm, mm. Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I think I would broadly agree with that, and I agree, especially with the fact that it's very broad ranging. It isn't just about a particular way you address things. It's actually, in some ways, it's a philosophy. It's how you actually approach life as a whole.
Life, exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it really needs to permeate every part of that, because if it's one thing if you can only address say your professional life and business and managing people or your product or your market or whatever with that sort of way of solving problems and addressing problems, but then you go home and you don't do that, that's still going to affect you. There's still going to be that crossover, and things will have a negative impact on each other. But yeah, I think it's a philosophy, generally speaking, and I think it's closer to things like stoicism and things like that are actually deep rooted in real old school philosophical frameworks that teach us how to kind of roll with the punches, look at the opportunities, not to not get overly anxious about things. I think there's a lot to it. Communication, I think, is a really big part of that. So how to communicate your ideas to others, to inspire them, to ensure that they understand exactly what it is that is expected of you, and all the sort of things. I think there's a vast web of skills actually that kind of form
Self
that
awareness, how
self-awareness.
to read the room, how to
Yeah,
develop your intuition.
yeah. There's a lot to it, really. But I think it all fundamentally starts in this place of this philosophy of just there's no problem too big or too small, and there is just no real benefit in getting upset over things when they don't go your way. It just doesn't help. Like I remember there's a friend of mine from many years that, to be honest, I don't really speak with anymore, and that's quite intentional. And that sort of about 10 years ago, really, I just stopped speaking to him, and we would catch up on the phone every now and then. But when I did speak to him, and all he would do is moan. That's all he did. And he was a business owner, and all he would do is moan. He's like, "Oh, I still can't afford. I've been running this business for 10 years. I still can't." And I would just say, do this, do that. Oh, I can't. And the answer would always be, I can't, Greg. You don't understand. I can't do it. And I'd say, okay, well, try that. No, that won't work. And it was always that. And that for me is like the absolute opposite of of what we're talking about. It's just,
Exactly.
it's playing the victim. It's
Yes.
the world is against me, and there's just there's just not this understanding of like, you are the master of your own destiny.
Yes,
And no
you're
matter,
the creator.
yeah, it's like, no matter how much you feel the world is against you, it could be, it's very easy to blame the world or, you know, everyone else on your problems instead of taking personal responsibility. And I'm a big believer in personal responsibility, you know, taking responsibility, pulling your bootstraps up and just going, right, let's go and sort this out. I will figure this out. But you have to take personal responsibility. No one else is to blame for anything else that happens in your life.
And you're not entitled to anything.
No, that's another good point too. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No one owes you anything. The world doesn't owe you anything. The universe doesn't owe you anything. You've got your God, your parents, your no one. You owe it to yourself. That's it.
Yeah, if you want to make it happen, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that, I mean, that's a very complicated, I suppose, answer to what growth mindset is, but it is a complicated thing. And that's why sometimes I think like that term doesn't do it justice. And it's just thrown around and people are like, growth mindset is posting twice a day on LinkedIn. It's like, fuck off. No, it's not. You know, making YouTube videos is growth mindset. No, it isn't. That's not what it means, you know.
If you are enjoying this episode and want to support the show, please like, subscribe with notifications turned on, and let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. This lets YouTube know we are doing something right. Back to the show.
And I also, part of the growth mindset is also about protecting your mindset and sometimes making hard decisions like removing yourself from some networks and connections.
Right, like I was talking about, like with my friend, exactly. Like that was very much an intentional thing from my perspective too. It's like, this is having a negative impact on me.
Yeah, exactly. And I do that regularly. So sometimes it hurts because you're like, oh, it's been a friend for 20 years. But actually, what did this friend bring to my life, really? It's just the same conversations. And often, I mean, I have lately removed 3 friends, old friends, from my life. And I realized it's just because exactly this kind of dynamics where they are stuck and you've been trying to help them get out of the stuck zone. But you always come back. And of course, I mean, we are not perfect. We also, have situations and who knows in life what may happen. And however, I know how I am also with myself. I can tell you, like a few years ago, I was like crushed by the bad feedback from an investor who did not believe in the hub.io when, my version of the hub that I wanted to build. Which, 2 years later, the hub is thriving and still alive today and helping millions of people find jobs. So he told me, like, Raya, we don't need that. Raya, we don't need you. Like he added, we don't need you. Like, was that necessary? And I remember I cried. And I can tell you 2 things. I cried. And then I cried. And I was like, okay, now done. Get your shit together, girl. Okay.
And that's the important bit. And I don't, and not everyone can do that.
Yeah, you have to, you can acknowledge the pain and we cannot be like, I refuse to be emotionless, okay?
Yeah.
I'm a human being, and we're all very, we have a lot of diversity within ourselves and we can embrace them, not suppress it. So you can feel it, acknowledge it, and then actually it will minimize it. You gave it space. You're like, okay, you had a good cry now. Hello, girl. Move on. Next. You're not going to stop. Come on. What's that? Life is long. It's not one moron who's going to tell you to stop and you're going to listen to them. Okay. Prove them wrong. You need to have this warrior attitude in you. And then I called my mom and I was like, mom, they said this and they said that. She's like, Mariah. Okay. So what I didn't tell you is that my mom is actually, she was a teacher in philosophy and she's a writer activist. So she's quite well known in North Africa and Middle East. And she's a warrior, a true warrior. She goes to war zones and to support the troops. And so I called her and I said, yeah, this guy, he said this. And it's really not like, uplifting. I do so much for the community. I've been hosting all this free networking. And she's like, Raya, I'm really surprised that it's only now that you're meeting somebody who's like, like tries to push you down. I'm like, she just reflected and she was like, I'm really surprised. I thought you would have met many like these. So
yeah, the world is full of negative people. How have you not encountered them yet?
Like, come on, like that woman gets death threats. So me compared to,
right,
to her, I was like, you know what? Yeah, like Yeah, that was ridiculous.
Well, and I suppose that's the other part of the equation too, is as well as like the world owes you nothing, the world can be an incredibly cruel place.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think a lot of people are, especially in this day and age, are entirely ignorant to, like really ignorant to. Like to the point where, you know, that's why some of the stuff that's happened over the last couple of years in the world, people just can't accept it and just can't accept the reality of it. And it's like, no, the world is actually, it has some really great stuff going, you know, and wonderful people, but it also has, you know, there's some unbelievable cruelty, and you will be exposed to that cruelty. And if your automatic reaction is just to go, oh no, poor me, it's like, you're not going to get very far. Like,
Get the helmet, please. Get
yeah,
the helmet.
exactly.
Get ready for the ride.
Yeah. And there's also something really, really weird I've noticed as well about sort of the threshold people have for, because even though I've met some people that I would consider to be quite resilient, they also get to a point, which is kind of understandable, but they get to a point where if bad things happen consecutively in a row, they kind of go, well, this bad thing happened, then this bad thing, and then this, it just doesn't seem fair. Right? So, well,
Fair. Yeah.
what do you mean fair? Like, you know, what, because these bad things happened in a row and you don't feel like you're given a break? Like, no one's orchestrating this. Like, you know, it's just sometimes a lot of bad things happen in a row. Like, just, you know what I mean? And that, I find that really interesting. Like, we're trying to see a pattern, because as humans, that's what we do, right? And we start seeing a pattern, then we start feeling like it's intentional from the universe that they keep throwing stuff. It's like, well, actually, no, I think what's happening is you're fixating on it so much, you're completely missing all of the good stuff that's happening to you, and all of the fortune that you have, and all of the opportunity that's right there. But you're just fixated on this bad luck event, this bad luck event, this bad luck event. It's like, you're still alive.
You still have food and a roof.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, calm down, you know. But it's difficult, you know, because you don't want to minimize people's feelings either. So it's you know.
In my when it happens to me, when I feel like, okay, something is not going my way, what helps me is that I just remember that I've been there before. So you have highs, you have lows, and I know that when I reach this point, I'm gonna go back. So I try to appreciate even that, and understand that this is part of it. And also, it's also important to surround yourself with other and successful founders. Okay, not like aspiring founders or beginners. It's good to be around them, you know, to get that energy, but get on your board or as mentors or advisors others that have been there. Yesterday, I was talking to a guy who started 40 companies, in his life. And I think he mentioned he had like 7 bankruptcies. But he's 60 plus. He's a true serial entrepreneur and successful one. So, and he told me, Raya, I didn't even ask for that comment or that story. He said, you know, building a company is like being in the middle of a tornado. It's chaos. It's chaos all around you. But what you need to do is like go to the center and just watch things happening. It's gonna go away. This is just part of it. And I have talked to many. I love especially learning from way older people, way experienced than me. Usually my mentors are like 50 plus, 60 plus year old white male. And I always appreciate their honesty. And all of them, no one will tell you the ride is easy. They will tell you have to actually enjoy the ride, the chaos, and you have to learn to adapt to chaos. So when things are not going well, this is normal. Just say it's good, like we said earlier, no? Oh, you have a problem, good. How can you fix it? Oh, it's not going your way, good. How can you fix it? What can you do?
Right.
Good.
It's almost unhealthy or unhelpful to assign good or bad to any given situation. It's just the situation.
Or it's good.
In some ways.
Or it's a good thing.
Or you just look at it both as good. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's just in some ways trying to look at it fairly neutrally. Either way, it's like, this is just what it is. Like, this is what you signed up for. Yeah, so there you go. Yeah. My co-founder is an older gentleman. He's actually retired technically, but not for long, because once we raise, we're going to go back into it. And that's really useful. His insights. I mean, I just love working with him. We're a great team because of, you know, he has the experience of having run businesses before and worked with large companies and all this sort of stuff, and done well for himself. And that's really his experience and his insights are just so valuable to our dynamic. You know, I bring the young, naive, well, semi-young, middle-aged, sort of naive kind of, you know, energy to the thing, and he comes in and he's like, great, calm down. So it's good. It's a nice balance, you know.
Yeah. Something I remember from two of my mentors, actually, and advisors. They both told me separately, like, Raya, you're trying to build in 3 years what it took us 15 years to build. Okay? Slow down. Slow down.
Did you take their advice?
I think I'm trying. I try. Instead of just doing more, focusing on the high impact activities. What is the activity that will bring you, 10x return instead of like just shooting in all directions? This is also something I teach the founders I work with. So it's important to slow down. I coach right now a founder from a super successful AI company. And actually himself, he said, Raya, I'm not doing a marathon. I'm not doing a sprint. I'm doing a walk. I'm walking step by step, one step at a time. It is slow, but each time he does an activity, because their target audience is a highly profitable one. So it's not about like gaining users. It's like, no. I go to that law firm. I know they have money. They need my technology. Done. And I talk one-on-one.
Right.
Or I bring them in meetings where I have 25 company representative in the room and I present.
So it's slow and steady wins the race. It's strategic. It's long pipeline, I assume. Yes. All that. Yeah.
And long-term vision.
Yeah. It's interesting though what you say about slowing down and doing too much. I mean, I'm very much in that position now where, for the last however many years, I've been doing a lot, between the pro bono advising work similar to what you've done, going to network events, working with accelerators and incubators, and the podcast that we're on now, my fractional CCO work, like just planting so many seeds. And that was very intentional. I just know that it has to be a full pace and just really expand the network, of founders and investors and all that sort of stuff. Very, very similar by the sounds of it to kind of where you've been in your career. And then now we're sort of staring down the barrel of hopefully securing funding for the startup and knowing, okay, that means I need to start being more intentional with the things to concentrate on, getting ready for being investor ready and, and making sure that we attract the right people on the team and all that sort of stuff. It suddenly means that, that you can't be spinning that as many plates, unfortunately. It does need to become more focused. And so, I'm having to cut things off, cut projects off now that I really would rather not, but it's for the greater good, especially now that I've got a team of people behind me, 12, 13 odd people that are looking at me to make this thing work. It's like, okay, well, I've got a responsibility now, right?
Exactly. It's important to learn to say no as well.
Yeah.
To opportunities and to evaluate. I actually this weekend I said I remember because I just told one of my team members about it. I said no to 3 clients who reached out to me via LinkedIn, because very quickly I'm like, this is not it's not a long-term project, and for a short-term project I'm gonna cost you some money, and you are not at the stage, you're actually not my kind of client. So they start to negotiate. I'm like, I'm not negotiating. You want a session with me one-on-one, 1 hour, it's going to cost you approximately 300 euros. So if you already negotiate for 300 euro with me for 1 hour, where I'm going to share with you all the strategies you need to do to accelerate, the next 6 months, save 6 months basically, to get where you want to get faster, that's the price. And so you have to say no. And that's a small project, but there are also bigger projects with bigger companies I'm saying no to because they're completely outside my trajectory. So you have this big opportunity. You're like, wow, this is a huge company. I could do this project with them. But the scalable part of my company, I will not be able to focus on that. So it's money today, but I'm jeopardizing and compromising the long-term plan. So we have to say no. It's very challenging because, especially in my case, I don't have investors. I'm building this myself, and I have expenses. So when you have a client coming and saying, I want to work with you, you're like, okay, that's That's a lot of money.
Mm.
What do I do here? But you have to say no even to.
It's about timing, right? I think it's never the case to sort of look back and say, "Oh, I shouldn't have said yes to so many things." I think when you're early on in this world, you have to say yes to as many things as possible. Like, just be open and see where it takes you and learn from it and go along with the ride. But then there comes a point where if some of the
Depends on
seeds have
timing.
grown, it's time to take care of those plants and not
Yeah,
keep planting new ones. But yeah,
exactly.
but look, we're approaching the end of part one now, and I do want to talk more about what you just mentioned there, what you're building now, because that's very interesting too. So we're going to talk about that in part two, if that's okay. So for those listening and watching, you're going to have to subscribe and do all of that stuff that you do on whatever platform you are using to listen or watch this. And in a couple of days' time, part two will come out, and we can find out what it is we're going to talk about next. So thanks for being with us for part one, and that's the end of part one.
See you later.
Thank you for listening and or watching. Subscribe with notifications turned on to get notified when part two comes out. While you wait, please join in the conversation in the comments below.